welcome to the video. This is my first look for week 14 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. A first look, first reaction to the pricing on the week 14 slate. We'll try to put a lineup together just by overlooking everything very early on in the week. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you would like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you are interested in some extra content, link is down below for the Patreon. Optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, all the fun stuff, all the data you'd ever need, color codicity, so it's quite easy to follow. Link can be found down below. Not just for the NFL, but the NBA, NASCAR, and the MLB as well once those seasons start back up again. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests or salary cap restrictions, anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, when you sign up on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus that's instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. Unlike last week where I thought there was very few good quarterback plays, I think there's a lot that we could end up playing this weekend. Like just up top, I think all three of these guys are totally playable. Patrick Mahomes versus the Raiders, Josh Allen and Tom Brady in this, which should be the best game of the week. We currently have a 52.5 point over-under, 3.5 point spread in the Buccaneers' favor. I think a lot of people are going to be stacking that game up, rightfully so, because there's many good plays. You got both the quarterbacks. You have Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, if you're going to throw them in there, even Dawson Knox. So lots of good plays here. It's also the 425 game, so it's kind of like the late night hammer. If you guys want to target that, I totally understand it. Both these quarterbacks are certainly in play. They're a little bit pricey, but I think you can make it work on this slate, depending on some injuries at the running back position. And then we have Justin Herbert versus the Giants. He's been great. Dak Prescott versus the football team, who's been terrible versus quarterbacks this year, below $7,000. I think you can certainly play Dak Prescott here. He's also been playing some pretty good football. If you want to save some money, I think we have a group of three good cheap quarterbacks relative to their matchups at these price points are certainly in play. You have Taysom Hill, whose finger's destroyed, but it doesn't sound like he needs surgery right now. And assuming he plays, I actually think he's a viable cash game quarterback. I'm not going to use him in this video because I typically try to stack guys up, and there was no one I would stack Taysom Hill with. If you're playing Taysom Hill, I would do it naked this weekend, especially if you're playing in cash games. I mean, he can get there rushing alone. Like, he's facing the Jets. The Jets made Gardner Minshew look like a Hall of Fame quarterback for about half a game last week. I don't think Minshew even scored like 2 more points after halftime, but he started the game amazing. Like, I don't know, was it 11 for 11 or something, 2 touchdowns to Dallas Goedert. But Taysom Hill, even though he wasn't great passing, 19 for 41, did have that 70-yard touchdown, which just boosted his points a little bit. But even before that, he was doing fine. 11 carries, 101 yards. If we can get anything close to that rushing upside this week, and the Jets are not good versus the run, and Taysom Hill will probably run the ball around 10 carries this time again, especially if he's having trouble throwing the ball with his torn up fingers. So I think he's fine in cash games, but for this video, I'm not going to use him just because I want to stack guys up, really. Cam Newton, if you can stomach that, completed 5 of 21 passes the last time out. It was brutal. He started the game off hot. Had a like 60-yard throw to DJ Moore, had the rushing touchdown, thought he was just going to be the nuts at quarterback. Well, just really wasn't the case. He looked absolutely awful, but he is facing Atlanta. He's playing at home. You can stomach going back to Cam Newton. I don't hate it. Projection-wise, he'll grade it well, point per dollar-wise, but it's not going to feel good. Taylor Heineke, and what's one of the higher scoring games of the week, like a 3-some point spread, I believe a 49.5 point over-under. I don't hate it. Also offers you some rushing upside. I think Heineke's fine. But for this lineup, I think it's either going to be between Dak Prescott or Josh Allen and Tom Brady. I think in cash games this week, Dak Prescott will be quite popular at this price point of only $6,700. They do have one of the higher implied team totals, and it's really easy to stack them because you either use CeeDee Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Dalton Schultz, all those guys are pretty cheap. I don't mean it's easy that it's only one guy because it actually is quite spread out, but it's easy to stack Dak Prescott because these guys aren't overly expensive is what I should say. But for me, let's just, I don't know, I feel like Tom Brady's a fine option here. I mean, it's interchangeable, really. I think all these guys are fine. Buffalo does have a good defense this year. There's no arguing that. But the loss of Tre'Davious White definitely hurts their passing defense. So this is definitely a tough decision. We know Tampa Bay is pretty weak versus the pass, and Josh Allen with the rushing upside does make them a little bit safer. It's only a $200 difference. If we have to drop from Josh Allen to Tom Brady at the end of this video just to make it fit, I don't think it's a big deal. So for right now, let's just plug in Josh Allen, I think. I mean, hopefully people are just looking at game logs and they see that game versus the New England Patriots. They just try to hop off a little bit. Because Josh Allen has been a little bit up or down this season, but yeah, keep in mind, they played him like a hurricane last night. They just really couldn't throw the ball. I mean, Mac Jones threw the ball 3 times, so that tells you anything. So since we're using Josh Allen, we need a pass catching option with him, and obviously The number one option would be Stephon Diggs. He's very expensive, $8,100, but he's the guy you'd want. Cole Beasley at $5,000, a little bit more easy to afford. The problem is he's very up or down. Sometimes he'll get 2 targets, sometimes he'll get 12 targets, and there's really no way of knowing when that's going to happen. Manny Sanders at $4,900 is even more of like a dart throw, it feels like. So if we can just make this fit, I'd like to get Stephon Diggs in. No one in this Tampa Bay secondary can really guard him, and he's been on a hot streak besides last week, which I'm not going to count versus New England because, again, just terrible conditions. He had a ball, like, I forget how many yards it was, but thrown right to him in the end zone, but really couldn't track it, hit him right in the hands. Could have had a pretty big day relative to the conditions that he was playing in, but still had 7 targets for 9.1 fantasy points. Besides that, 14.5, 33.2, 18.3, 20.4. Not like huge games besides the Jets, but I think Diggs will definitely have a good time versus Tampa, and it should be pretty back and forth fireworks. Highest over on the slate. So we're going to plug him in, and we want a run back option with this Bill stack. And it really comes down to, I guess, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, or Chris Godwin. No Antonio Brown, once again, which does give a boost to guys like Godwin and Evans. And I want to say I want to side with Godwin here. I realize he's more expensive than Mike Evans. Like, usually these guys are about $100 or $200 off in pricing. DraftKings finally did the right thing and put Godwin's more expensive, which he should be. I think Godwin should honestly be around $8,000. I still think he's a little bit too cheap. I realize Buffalo has the number 1 pass defense right now. We got to keep in mind they lost Tre'Davious White, and the numbers are definitely going to get boosted after last week versus the Patriots where they threw the ball 3 times. So you got to keep some of those things in mind. But with Rashad Perriman and Mike Evans on the outside, facing his own defense, Chris Godwin in the slot should be able to eat this team up. And I'm not scared of this price point. Hopefully people see him $500 more than Evans and they just kind of flock away from him. But I mean, Godwin's getting peppered with targets. We saw that versus Atlanta. I mean, the guy was an absolute monster. 17 targets. Not that we can expect that again, but I mean, he should see around 10, hopefully more targets in this game. 15 catches. You had a rush for 9 yards, but 33.2 points, and that's without a touchdown. So I like Godwin a lot. I think this is a pretty good way to start your lineups if you are stacking this game. Now, we have to find a lot of value because we just spent a ton of money. Allen's nearly $8,000. Godwin's above $7K, and Stephon Diggs is $8,100. So that means we have to find some value. But the good thing for us is I think we can go with value at running back once again. Now, this will depend on injuries, but as of right now, we have no idea who is playing and who is not. Because as of right now, DeAndre Swift, he is questionable. Eli Mitchell's questionable. I think like the entire 49ers group of running backs is questionable right now. Jeff Wilson's banged up. Eli Mitchell's banged up, and obviously just kind of everyone's hurt. So that'll be interesting. We also have J.D. McKissic still questionable and Melvin Gordon questionable. But if those guys happen to be out, once again, we have a lot of value at running back, and we can honestly play similar players like we did last week. And the first guy we're going to look at, and if you just want to look at the expensive guys, we can, but we just can't afford these guys. Like Eckler's fine. Kamara, we're not sure if he's going to play, but Taysom Hill definitely hurts him a little bit. Mixon's banged up. I mean, Fournette's been amazing in the passing game, which is he's one of the better running backs in football over the past month now. But I can't afford any of these guys in this lineup. Like, they're fine plays, but I just don't really see the need to spend up a running back this week. As of right now, the landscape of this slate could change, but it looks like another good week to save some money. Antonio Gibson, even if McKissic plays, I still think we can play Gibson. I mean, the last week McKissic played, he got hurt very late in that game versus Seattle, and Gibson was still just dominating the touches, 29 carries and 7 targets, good for 26.6 points. Last week with no McKissic, 23 carries, 6 targets. Like, he's getting elite usage. Even since week 10 versus Tampa, 24 carries, 19, 29, 23, and he always has a moment in the passing game. McKissic, if he is back, that will hurt his upside in the passing game, but he's still going to get the rock probably around 20-some times, and he's facing Dallas's defense, which hasn't been awful this year, but they are giving up a lot of yards, and I do this game from a DFS perspective, and if you are stacking the Cowboys, you could run it back with Gibson because they should be involved in the pass game, especially no J.D. McKissic. So $6,000, he's going to grade out as one of the best point per options at the running back position this week, and I feel pretty good about it. And then looking for some more value here. Like I mentioned, Melvin Gordon, he is currently questionable, and DeAndre Swift, I would say, is probably going to trend doubtful this week. We'll have to see what happens, but that opens up some room for guys like Jamal Williams and Javonte Williams. Don't get them confused, 2 J. Wills here, but if you guys watched the Denver game versus the Chiefs on Sunday night, Javonte Williams is getting elite usage, 9 targets, 23 carries. That's over 30 total opportunities. They finally unleashed him, 32-point DraftKings points. The guy's an absolute stud. He's great at breaking tackles. He looks like a fantastic running back. Once they get rid of Melvin Gordon, I mean, it's all systems go for Javonte Williams. I think he's going to be an elite fantasy back. I am hoping he sits out because he is facing Detroit. And if he's going to get us 25-plus touches versus Detroit, below $6,000, he is definitely the best player running back on this slate. So let's just assume Melvin Gordon is out right now. Let's just cross our fingers. Hope he gets some extra rest. I'm not hoping he stays hurt. I'm just hoping he takes another week off. And they're facing Detroit, so it shouldn't be that hard to win this game without Melvin Gordon. So we're going to plug in Javonte Williams, just assuming Melvin Gordon is out for right now. I'd feel really good about that. And then we're going to plug in Jamal Williams in the flex spot. Just, again, another assumption. Just never get to make this many assumptions, but it's only on Tuesday morning, so it's kind of the only thing we can do at this point because we have exactly no practice reports as of right now. We're going to plug in Jamal Williams. He wasn't great in that game versus Minnesota, but he still had fine usage for his price point, 17 carries. The lack of targets was the thing that sucked, but yesterday we're using the running backs in the passing game, which was kind of odd. I mean, they won the game, but I would take around 20 total touches again at $5,500. Denver, we have the softest matchup out there, but again, it's just the running back that's going to get pretty solid usage for his price point, so we'll plug him in the flex spot. And again, I can't afford expensive running backs, so we're kind of forced to go this cheap route, which, again, if all these guys are out, this would be a really good trio of running backs to use. Now, at this point, we only have $3,200 left for our last 3 spots. Fortunately enough for us, 2 of those last 3 spots are a defense and tight end, which we can usually punt, which I think is probably a good way to go this week. Not really liking any of the spend-up options. Just looking at the defenses here. Like, yeah, the Broncos versus Detroit looks good. The Chargers versus the Giants, so I guess Jake Fromm's going to start. I mean, I'd love to play the Chargers. The problem is they're about $4,000, so I can't do that. I mean, in tournaments if you want to, but I just don't ever think it's worth spending up for defense. Typically above, like, the highest I think I've gone this season was maybe last week with the Dolphins at $3,300. It worked out well, but I think that's the highest I've gone all season long. Typically, I'm in this bottom of the barrel range, hanging out with the Giants, Jaguars, and Lions. I think the Lions versus Denver is playable. I guess I would say the Panthers versus the Falcons are playing at home. They have a solid defense, and the Falcons' offense is obviously nothing to be scared of. I mean, if you stop Pitts and Patterson, you don't really have to do much else. Yeah, Russell Gage had a good game versus the Buccaneers, but I'm not really scared with the Falcons' offense. So if we plug them in at $2,800, we're not getting a ton of value there, but that still leaves us $3,400 left, and we go with the dirt cheap tight end. Like, as much as I like to play guys like Gronk, Andrews, Pitts, Schultz, I don't really want to play Pitts, but Schultz, Dawson Knox, even to pair up with Josh Allen, we just can't afford that in this lineup. Like, these guys are playable. George Kittle, who I loved in tournaments last week, absolutely went off. That was nice. But we don't really have a Foster Moreau type chalk guy this week. I mean, because even if Waller happened to miss, I believe Foster Moreau is like, yeah, $4,000, which that just doesn't feel that great. He only had 1 catch last week, so it wasn't like he went off or anything. Logan Thomas, assuming he's going to miss. You have Ricky Seals-Jones, questionable. If these guys are both out, we have John Bates here at $3,000, so we could certainly go that route. We also have James O'Shaughnessy, $2,000. But if you guys weren't paying attention, he did have 6 targets in this game. Only caught 2 of them. I mean, it's never exciting playing a Jaguar, but did have 6 targets. That's 11 targets the past 2 weeks. Not really doing much with it. 7.9, 3.3, but at least he's on the field catching passes. I think it's really between John Bates or James O'Shaughnessy here. We can plug in John Bates for now. That would leave us $3,800 left for the wide receiver spot, which, yeah, it's pretty gross. I'm not sure any of these guys are really going to be playable. Maybe we get to drop down to O'Shaughnessy. Let's see what the $3,900 range looks like. Josh Reynolds at $4,100. You know, if we drop Josh Allen to Tom Brady, we could actually, I think, fit in Josh Reynolds, which I think would look a lot better, to be honest, because I don't want to play anybody like Tajay Sharp, Des Fitzpatrick, Curtis Samuel. Looks absolutely awful. So I think we'd actually have to get to, let me see if John Bates will fit here. So if we plug in Tom Brady at quarterback instead of Josh Allen, I prefer Josh Allen, but I still think Tom Brady is a good play. That would leave us $4,000, so I think we're just missing out on Josh Reynolds. So we'd have to drop John Bates to O'Shaughnessy, which I think is fine. They feel like pretty much the same exact play. Both teams have utilized their tight end 1 this year, and again, no Dan Arnold. And that would leave you $4,100 left, and you would be able to fit in Josh Reynolds. Now, you have 2 Detroit Lions, which feels absolutely gross, but just for a first look, this is not a bad-looking lineup. You got Tom Brady, Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin, Josh Reynolds, O'Shaughnessy, Jamal Williams, and the Panthers defense that evens out your salary. Again, guys, do not just use this lineup in all of your contests. It is Tuesday morning. A lot of things can change, but as a first look, I don't think it looks half bad. With that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. Check out the Patreon if you want some extra content. And don't forget to check out Prize Picks if you are interested. The link can be found down below, and you get an instant deposit match up to $100 if you do decide to sign up. It's very fun to play over there. I highly recommend it. I think that'll be it. I'll stop rambling. I'll see you guys on Thursday for the Showdown video.